Welcome to our series of videotape time capsules commemorating the 75th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. I'm Eric Wheeler, moderator for this first panel discussion. It's Monday, May 11th, 1992. We're going to talk about the past, present, and future of this university, addressing the theme of the 75th observance, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. To start off, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Dr. Lorraine Missling is a professor emerita at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. She taught in the School of Business for 24 years, taught business education and administrative management. Dr. Missling received the Excellence in Teaching Award in 1976 and 1987. Sitting next to Dr. Missling is Dr. Ron Mickel, who has been at the university here since 1961. Dr. Mickel is currently a professor of history. He's director of the honors program here at UW-Eau Claire, and he served many years as the chairman of the Department of History. Richard Beckman was here at the university from 1961 to 1990. He was director of the Media Development Center, in fact, essentially created the Media Development Center here at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. He coordinated the audiovisual services and also received the Excellence Award in 1987. By the way, Dick Beckman was interviewed in 1976 in honor of the 60th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. And Sarah Harder has joined us this morning as well. Sarah has been with the university since 1968. She serves as Special Assistant to the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, coordinates the Women's Studies program here at the university. Sarah also was involved in the 60th anniversary of the university here in Eau Claire, a videotape that was recorded back in 1976. So here we are again, looking back and looking ahead at where the university has been, where we are now, and hopefully where we will be going in the upcoming years. To start off our discussion, I'd like you all to consider the campus culture here at the university, how you visualize what we have to offer as a university, what you see perhaps as some of the strong points and maybe some of our shortcomings. And I'd like to start with Lorraine Missling, if you would.
I've always found the culture of the university to be a very excellent setting for learning. It seems that the university has kept pace with its resources, considering the resources that we have available, actually very well. We attract good students, quality people. Not only that, I think we attract quality faculty and quality administration. I also think that we have a good blend when we look at the faculty and the administration and the students. It seems that we're all working for the same purpose. And I guess one of the reasons why I was so excited about coming to Eau Claire is that big word, excellence. That again, we're striving for something that we grow as we're on the job, and we're striving for something that is better every day. So I enjoyed that. High standards seem to be a real part of the culture here at the university. Another thing that impressed me was good human relations within the staff of the university, within the university community, and within the community around Eau Claire. Those would be starters that I might throw out, even though I could go on for quite some time. I really have enjoyed the culture of the university.
Thank you. Ron Mickel.
I think what stands out to me is the way we have moved from having, at the time I came here, a somewhat uniform culture. We weren't that far from being a normal school. Teacher training was very central to what was being done, and the student body was not that diverse. We've moved from that, it seems to me, across the last 30 years, to a situation where we have a variety of cultures on campus. We have those who are devoting their lives to science, and they tend to spend time with similar people who are concerned about science. History has found itself increasingly not rubbing elbows with people in other disciplines, but focusing in on themselves. And the student body also has become more diverse. I think one of the things that we've been doing more recently is trying to bridge those various cultures in some formal ways, but also in more informal ways, so that people from various disciplines and from various interests can learn from each other. But like any real multiversity or university, I don't think we're characterized by a single culture, though I agree with everything Lorraine said about the culture that provides a kind of umbrella. But there's an awful lot going on here that's a matter of rather exciting ferment among various groups.
Dick Beckman, what do you think?
My memory brings back administrators such as Leonard Haas, which his point of view was humanistic. He was very concerned with the individual, and I think that attracted that kind of staff in the 60s and 70s, people who were concerned about helping students receive a good education. And I think that has continued in the 80s and now into the 90s. I think that's important. We can't forget that we're dealing with individuals, and I believe the faculty and staff create that kind of atmosphere here at Eau Claire. At least try to create that atmosphere as much as possible.
Thank you. Sarah Harder?
Well, I'm lucky to come at the end of my three colleagues' statements, with which I entirely concur, and with which I will deviate a bit. The university, I think, is in many ways symptomatic of excellent institutions at this time in our national history. It is stuck in a version, a view of what excellence is. It has indeed undergone great growth, and in terms of the academic ghettos that Ron describes, very clearly there is an understanding that we need now to build bridges and walkways among those ghettos, because most of the challenges that lie in our future, in fact, lie in the chasms of ignorance that exist between those areas of knowledge and expertise. It is an institution where excellence, to a certain extent, has added up to smugness, to the belief that because we have been so good and so effectively managed, and because we have met so many challenges, that we need not confront the stark reality of the massive need for reexamination and change that must take place if we are to look into the next century. So for me, the challenge still exists to begin to broaden our idea of excellence to include many more people than we have in our traditional past, and to include some of the people from our traditional past. We are a regional university that, for instance, that provided access to higher education, access to opportunity to people who would never have had it otherwise. Some of those same people who could have benefited from graduating from this institution are now being excluded because under enrollment limits we are raising what we call standards. Well, I have to raise the question about when is a standard if in fact we can see that many people who are leaders today, having come through this institution, would not have been allowed in the past. What are we going to do to meet the challenge of a workforce that will need to train and retrain and educate and re-educate throughout its lifetime, when at this point we have only 20% of our student population non-traditional students? Are we going to be ready to make the changes to open doors for that group of students, to pull in minority students, not only from our growing Hmong community here in the Eau Claire area, but to reach out across the state? Are we going to be ready as a school that has always had a majority of women students to emphasize what must be done to make women leaders and full participants in the next century?
I think you've all given an excellent overview of your personal concept of what this university is. And I think, Ron, you highlighted that the university really has evolved from a normal school, from a strictly teacher prep institution, into a more of a multiversity, as many four-year colleges, state universities have across the country. And Sarah, I think you pointed out perhaps some shortcomings in where we are right now, and referred to the fact that maybe we're in a bit of a rut, we've become somewhat static. Well, then let's look ahead, 5 years, 10 years. Currently, there is an initiative on campus to redefine the baccalaureate degree. I guess what I would like any of you to respond to is, first of all, what is your vision of what you would like to see the university become? And do you feel that the redefinition of the baccalaureate degree fits into that conception that you might have of the future of this university? It's
Well,
open. Go
as
ahead.
a
Ron.
member of that commission on the redefinition of the baccalaureate, and for the past year and the coming year chairing the subcommittee on curriculum, one of the two groups that it's divided into, I can say we have an ever-enlarging group of faculty who are involved in exploring possible new directions. We've agreed on a number of general goals that a redefined baccalaureate should achieve. They tend to be general goals, and trying to translate that into specific courses of action. When you get to even 3 people in a room, you have 3 different versions as to how to proceed. We're approaching now the 3rd year of what is seen as a 5-year effort at the redefinition of the baccalaureate, and are getting to the point where a lot of the experimenting that has been going on in classrooms, and there's over 100 faculty who are involved in pedagogical experiments that may feed into what we see as a redefinition of the baccalaureate. We're exploring the nature of the area of specialization in the coming year, with the faculty symposiums this fall focusing on that and the relationship of that to general education. And there's a general desire to draw connections between disciplines, to provide some of those bridges you're talking about in a rather formal way, to deal with students in small groups as, say, freshman seminars required of everyone coming in. But you're always confronting limited resources. You can only offer so many small classes without having a lot of big classes to compensate. But I find myself, having moved from being rather skeptical of this whole operation, becoming more and more enthused about it. And I think that in another couple of years, we're going to be laying before the faculty some definitions as to what we ought to be doing with the baccalaureate that should better prepare people for a lifetime of learning, should incorporate an understanding of other cultures and of gender and the like much more fully than we do, should be creating an appreciation of aesthetics and of values, a whole series of goals that I'm increasingly hopeful that we can actually do something about implementing.
Thank you. I'd like to talk more about that and give you all a chance to reflect on the redefinition. But I think at this point I'd like to ask Lorraine what you see the role of this particular university in preparing students, particularly in the business field. You've had a lot of experience in that area. And we're talking about, there's been a lot of talk about involving the university in the community. And certainly that's a broad concern, is that where are the jobs going to be? Where are the new entrepreneurs going to be coming from? Where are the new businesses going to be? What do you see as a key contribution that this university can make towards in the business field, in the community?
Businesses very definitely are going to be more involved as we continue in education. As a matter of fact, I have seen it more within about the last 10 years, let's say, but it's going to be even more than that. For example, internships. The university is going to be working very closely. Not that we don't do that already, but we're going to be doing more of it and more paid internships. And probably a portion of that revolves around unemployment, that we want to, for example, the last couple of years, our graduates have not, our record is not as good in employing them because of the, quote, recession, or whatever word you want to use for our economy at this point. But if they get in an internship and prove that they are a quality person and work so well, teamwork is going to be a very important word, they're going to be hired probably by that company, which is very good. Then another thing that I should bring up would be the global concept, which I'm sure we would all lean toward that as we discussed today. But we're doing so much in our School of Business so that we can prepare these students when they're involved internationally. And I guess it's about 5 years ago, and that wasn't even long enough, that I started units in business communication involving the global effect on these students. And that has to mushroom even more as we proceed too. Just within the past year also, I had a conference with our dean here, and he feels quite happy with the community of Eau Claire, the way the businesses have come through to offer their services, to see what they can do, even financial support, or to assist in research. And that would be one thing to take off on what Sarah said, that I think we're going to extend ourselves. Extension is probably a good word. The university will be extending itself around the state, and much of our evaluation of communication will be research-minded. And research is a generic word in a way, but we will base a lot of our teaching on research. I don't know if I've given you enough to go on there, but I look at it that way just lightly.
Excellent. Good comments. I'd like to ask Dick about technology and the future of technology education. I know that when you started here back in the early 60s, you were pretty much a one-man audiovisual service. The Media Development Center now has grown to include a variety of technologies that weren't even conceived of back in the early 60s. Looking ahead now, from your perspective, what will the role of media development and technology services be here on this university, looking ahead perhaps 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's true that our world is a much smaller place now because of, excuse me, of technology. We can watch wars on television as they happen, as we did in Desert Storm. We can contact experts all over the world and bring them into the classroom without too much difficulty. And I think that is going to be improved and is going to become more cost-effective so that we can bring the world together here at Eau Claire. We talked a little bit about some of the limitations of the university. I think our location away from large cities and in this rather rural area presents a challenge to bring the cultural diversity and other opportunities to the university. Communication can help that a great deal. I read the other day where the little computer chip or memory chip is becoming smaller and smaller, and it's not inconceivable that we'll have so much information at hand in memory that an average person can access that information directly from their home or any space on campus. So I believe those technology advances are going to take place very rapidly. When we talked about technology in the last session in '76, the computer had not really taken a hold then, and we projected ahead what it would do. And we were talking about the 90s, and of course what we talked about happened in the 80s. And so we were 10 years then beyond our wildest dreams about what technology could do. So to predict now what it could do would be a real shot in the dark. Given that as a background, I think that going back to Ron's discussion of the curriculum and the baccalaureate degree, I think the student of today and tomorrow has to be extremely aware of how to communicate well with each other and with the people that they serve. So in that preparation, I would hope that good human relations, good team, as you mentioned, Lorraine, good team techniques, how to get along with other people, how to be sensitive and recognize other cultures could be a part of that. And I think technology, even though it's mechanical in a certain way, can contribute to bringing realistic and resources, realistic events and resources into the classroom so that the teacher can take advantage of providing those to the student.
Back in 1976, the 60th anniversary of the university, you predicted the rise of the personal computer. At least you're credited with that prediction. Are you
Right.
willing to look into the crystal ball and predict the next technology to emerge in the next 10 years?
Well, I think the silicone chip will bring many advancements to us. The computer, as we all know, has shrunk from a rather large device down to a notebook size that would fit in Sarah's briefcase as she goes to Washington. I think that's going to become a pocket device. It'll shrink in size and also at the same time increase in its memory and its capabilities. I would envision what we might call a plug-in society, where through various electronic means we'll be able to plug into networks of information all over the world. And we'll be able to do that not only from universities, but also from our own homes and from our businesses, of course. And that network exists now in a very simplified form, but I believe with the advent of more sophisticated satellites and more sophisticated personal technology, we'll be able to plug into a lot of things that are going on in the information world.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
just
Lorraine.
think we have to get familiar with the word networking, as you were indicating. The last Kaplan magazine came out, and it's just filled with networking, and even that is behind schedule because that word means so many things, and it's exactly what you're saying. We are going to be networked with in just a variety of ways.
Sarah, I have a question for you about an issue that you raised, actually a shortcoming that you focused on here at the university, and that is in multicultural programs, multicultural awareness perhaps in the curriculum and in the outreach services. The university system here in Wisconsin currently has an initiative called Design for Diversity. If you could comment specifically on Design for Diversity and then maybe perhaps broaden that or personalize that to focus on what you would like to see this institution initiate as far as outreach services or curriculum in the next 5 to 10 years in those areas that you focused on.
Design for Diversity is one of, frankly, a 2-decade series of paper programs that the university system has been involved in. And since I had the pleasure of being the person titularly in charge of most of these, starting back in about 1974, I have to say that Design for Diversity had a bigger headline than most, but I'm not sure that at this point it has had any greater results than others. Certainly it is now requiring our students to at least have a brushing acquaintance with some coursework that they wouldn't have had before that deal with racial minorities, with international issues. But that leads me to, I don't have great hope for it in and of itself unless it becomes a central part of this much broader initiative and unless our faculty as a whole really buy it in a way they have not yet bought it. And that brings me to my other hope and dream for any true redefinition of a baccalaureate. Again, to move that beyond the paper exercise, we must come to see this university as having a much stronger and challenging and more painful relationship with the world around it. We must do it for a dozen reasons. I'll try to hit a couple of them. Lorraine, I mean, all of you have said this, but my concern is that we have defined standards, what we call either entrance standards or exit standards for our students and for our programs, largely in isolation from the world out there. We have decided that we are the people who decide what excellence is, and we will determine it. That has had rather devastating consequences, I think, for certain students with certain backgrounds. We know, for instance, that given the way teaching happens in our public school system today, girls and minorities, for example, will have come in with much less preparation in the area of mathematics than white male students. On the other hand, one of our major standards, an assessment standard at the front end, has to do with mathematics, and a very narrowly defined kind of mathematics, linear pre-calculus math, which has less, I will argue, less and less relationship to the practical need to use quantitative literacy in the world. Furthermore, if one has not had pre-calculus math for 20 years, as most of our returning adult students have not, guess what? The inoculation they took 20 years ago has not, does not any longer serve. This means that we've forced them to go back painfully through a whole re-gearing of that what remedial courses to lead them one more time up through algebra before they can get the most basic degree here, and then on into calculus, which more and more technology, in fact, is doing for us in the future. And I would argue, therefore, what we need in mathematical literacy for everyone is the capacity to penetrate the way math and quantification is being used to mystify people, to block people from knowledge, to misrepresent statistically what's in fact going on in our world. We never do anything in relationship to that. On the other end, I think Lorraine talked about the internships. I think for every one of our students, we have to be getting them involved in the world, that the 4-year period, the isolated 4-year period in a student's life when that student could be privileged by sitting back in the ivory tower and learning, in this community of scholars, and then presumably be let loose on the world, it simply will not work. It isn't working now. We're finding that, frankly, some of our best students and some of the best minds trained in arts and sciences disciplines, who will be wonderfully prepared at some point to be leaders in our world, have not been forced to apply what they are learning to real-life problems in the world around them, or to see themselves as change makers in that world. And I believe that must be central to what we are doing, and that means partnerships all the way around, and it means the School of Arts and Sciences getting out of its splendid isolation. I can remember times when they used to look down at the School of Business and say, well, they're talking to business people all the time. Well, I hope so.
Yes,
I hope everybody, in fact, is getting out and talking to our social service agencies that aren't working, talking to our community leaders in government that is not working, who are ready, in fact, to say, if our institutions aren't working, we've got the brain power here and the practical experience there to find the way it's going to happen. But that won't happen with our sitting here and thinking about how shall we redefine the baccalaureate degree.
Other comments? Are any of you as pessimistic as Sarah is about Design for Diversity? Are you optimistic, perhaps?
I think I'm a little more optimistic, or feel that I am, in part because I think our graduate schools in the arts and sciences have taken upon themselves to include in the training of new doctoral students who will be our new hires. They know more, they are sensitive to the issues, and they're also interested in it. The work that's being done, for example, in history among ethnic minorities, racial groups, women, and so on, tends to be being done by a younger generation. We are going to be retiring a lot of people in the next few years here at Eau Claire. And the new generation coming in, I think, will be including much more, as is currently happening among the younger people in our department, much more in the way of cultural diversity. And it will happen. It'll happen with a new generation of faculty.
Great.
And actually, the things Sarah is saying, even though we might use the word pessimism here, I consider it
I don't mean them
optimism.
pessimistically.
No, I consider those very positive statements. That's exactly what we have to look at. And I love to hear you say that business and liberal arts. I used to say to the liberal arts students, just take one course in business, so maybe you'll see a little bit more what it's like. If you can take more, wonderful, work it in your program. So I really concur with some of the things. Sure, there are a few negatories out there that we have to work on, but I think we have a lot of things to look at that are going to be fun to work on, and I consider it very positive.
there is somewhat of a paradox in that we are at an institution of higher learning, enrollment of around 10,000, one of the important Wisconsin centers for higher education. And we are surrounded by a wonderful natural environment. We are, for the most part, away from many of the urban problems that we are continually reminded of. We are away from many of the international problems that we are continually reminded of. The paradox is that I see, perhaps, and I want you to reflect on this if you could. Here we are. Many people come to Eau Claire because they do want to escape from many of the problems that the Design for Diversity is addressing. With that in mind, that here we are in our own somewhat privileged, somewhat protected part of the world, how do we perhaps convince ourselves that this is something that we do need to be concerned about? And once we've convinced ourselves of that, then how do we go about really making a difference in awareness of other cultures, awareness of gender bias, awareness of many of the shortcomings of American society and technology that has brought us to this point in 1992? Do you see that there is a paradox? And then if you agree with that, how do you think that we might resolve that?
I've beaten up on the university a bit, so I need now to give it a lot of credit, because I came here in 1968 never having been out of the Midwest, and as a matter of fact, never having any sense of a culture much beyond what exists here. And very frankly, Harry and I did escape here with our then 3 and soon to be 4 children, because it was a wonderful Dick and Jane corner of the world to raise kids in. But this university did, in fact, challenge me in many ways and gave me many opportunities to connect with the realities that existed out there, and the realities, as I say, in terms of my early affirmative action responsibilities, that we weren't quite ready to confront here. What I've had a chance to do, and I think many others have had a chance to do, is to see firsthand the challenges that exist out there in the world. In my case, not only traveling a great deal nationally, becoming very strongly involved in the work of national women's organizations and work with equity across the board, but also then international work. I think that the university offers a place that allows, with the new technology Dick talks about, and with travel being made more easier for everyone, it offers a wonderful chance to step back and get perspective on, if we'll dare to look at what's out there, and if we're ready to bring what's out there here to challenge us. I would hate to live anywhere else. I've had dozens of offers to go live some place like Washington or New York. No, thank you. This place is a place that I love and admire. I love it because of its roots, its tradition. I love it because of its beauty. I love it because it cares about people. I want simply to broaden all of those things to allow more people to have the advantage of this doorway to the world.
Go ahead.
And why are we such a good university? Each good student brings another good student. And again, whatever you term good. But we have enjoyed working with those people. As Dick said, we're so humane. We look at more than subject matter. We look at the whole person. And that's why we love being here, because the staff is that type of a group also. I, too, have had offers to go many places. I just love it here, and I have loved my years of teaching at the university. If I could reflect back, and I know all 3 of the panel members can relate to this, the many, many committees we were on back in the 60s and the 70s. I term that doesn't mean we always accomplished everything we wanted to or accomplished anything, but I consider this university the one that was pretty much on top of everything, because they said we better have a committee and see if we can do something about it. And our chancellor and assistant chancellors would go to Madison to Board of Regents meetings and so on. Eau Claire would always come out on top, it seems, because we were doing a lot of things.
Let's continue on this sense of place. Ron, would you reflect on how you've managed to end up here for the important years of your professional life?
Ended up here because I liked the initial job offer and job offers that followed weren't as attractive as staying here, and I've learned to love it. I don't think it's as isolated as some people on the two coasts think. There are lots of ways to stay in touch with other people within your profession. The computer networks that are available now make it instantaneous to communicate with people all over the country, and it's a wonderful place to live. I do think, though, that to get back to something Sarah said quite early, that in terms of the student body that we need to attract in the future, we have to be aware that we are moving into I think, a new kind of structure for American life, and the American society, the American economy. It's the globalization of our economy, where the workforce is finding itself competitively in a situation involving the Taiwanese, people in Africa, whatever. The high-paying industrial jobs simply aren't going to be here. And people who once could go from public schools into an adequately paying job aren't going to be able to do it. The jobs just are not going to pay the way they once did. Consequently, we have to recognize that a college degree today is more important than a high school diploma was 100 years ago in terms of a lifetime of work, lifetime of learning, lifetime of just living in society. We have to find a way to provide a college education to a sizably larger proportion of our population, not a smaller proportion as we've been doing. And doors have to be opened, or these people are going to find themselves slinging hamburgers in a McDonald's all their lives simply because they can't get anything better than a minimum wage job without the skills that a university can afford. Thus, we have a special role, I think, to play here in Wisconsin in providing a way for people to leave areas that are competitively disadvantaged in the global economy and find opportunities to find employment, develop skills, knowledge, whatever, to be able to compete in a world situation.
Let me add on to that, not simply to compete in terms of business and workforce. One of the other things about Wisconsin that is wonderful for me is that it works. It is a state that works. We have clean government, by and large progressive government. We have inventive government. We have created relationships between the university and our public policy arena that have in fact added up to some really remarkable programs that have been adopted nationwide. The other reason that we will need a larger and larger proportion of our population to have access to a redefined baccalaureate degree is because we need citizens who will be ready and ready and ready to answer all the challenges that are not going to get simpler or fewer in the decades ahead, but are going to get more and greater. And what the university does, I believe, beyond a technical school education, which can in fact prepare one for a higher paying job, is to create that sense of social responsibility, that sense of connectedness and problem solving in the much larger sense that I believe that we must need to continue to open these doors for students here.
Do you have any reflections on 29 years here at the university? Living in the Chippewa Valley, you were essentially a one-man media development center, and now it's broadened dramatically. What has been special for you about this place, this university, and this place here in the Chippewa Valley?
I think the basic values of the university are all the way from the administration to those of us who serve the student on a daily basis, were honesty and sensitivity to people's needs. We had good moral values. It kind of was in harmony with the kind of environment that we live in around here. It was a good place to bring up your children, so to speak.
Sure.
I think those same basic values need to remain even more today than they did in the 60s and 70s, because we are facing greater challenges of sensitivity towards other people and other situations. And so the role of the teacher, I think, is going to change, or is changing, from one who is just a disseminator of information to a person who leads the students through a lot of opportunities to learn on their own or by themselves or in conjunction with other small groups, rather than for just the lecture method to remain. And I think that'll be a great change in our school here. And I think you can have those changes and still have the basic values of honesty. I still remember Chancellor Haas, in my first budget meeting with him, he said, gee, he said, this is a big budget. And I said, yes, I said, I realize that, but I've contacted each of the chairmen of the departments, and I've asked them honestly what their needs are, and I've tried to put together a realistic program. And you know, a few of them told me I should pad it so that when you cut it, I'll have enough money to do the job. And I said, I prefer not to do that because I believe you want a straight answer. And I think that's what this university is about. We want straight answers. We don't want to fool anybody. And I think that's a good university because of that.
Thank you.
I
Lorraine?
concur with the idea that even though we're engrossed in technology and change, there are going to be so many different ways of presenting materials to students. On the other hand, then we still revert back to good communications, which again is a broad term to use. But they still, in order to circumvent crime or Los Angeles riots or whatever, we have to try to make a better world for everyone, better citizens, good readers, for example, good writers, good speakers, and good listeners. And that is being a better communicator. I think that's what we need. And I think UW-EC will survive because we are hard workers and we want the best. And yes, in another 50 years, we'll be around, we'll be doing a good job, even though we're going to have to work hard.
I was born in Chicago, and I've often wondered what would have happened to me if, fortunately, I had not managed to escape from the city when I was 9 years old, and if I had ended up at a mega university of any sort, because I believe that one of the great advantages of a city and an institution this size is not only that it works, but it's ready to keep working, and the size is not so daunting that people believe they have the right to opt out and say, oh, well, I can't change it anyway. You always know you can change it anyway here, and you better try it. And I think that's going to be the major challenge for the next 20 years is to get students, and I don't care if they are 21-year-old students or 45-year-old students, to be ready to say about their own lives, about their community, and about the world around them, I can change it. I can make it better. I've got the guts. It's going to be, oh, I wish I didn't have to. I wish I didn't have to. But I'm going to do it. It's going to be a pain, but it's going to be fun, and we'll do it. And with our institutions, frankly, nationally, in some real question, fraying at the edges, in some cases rotting from within. I don't care if you talk about the healthcare system or what system you talk about. It could be very easy for this generation of young people who's coming up to say, no thanks, I'm going to opt out. If we're on a downward coast, I'm coasting. I'm not going to do what is the hopeless thing, roll up my sleeves and try to take a slog at reinventing this. Reinventing everything that's around us is our challenge. And I think this is the kind of place, if we're ready to engage students in that challenge more directly, that's going to prepare those leaders who will do it.
I used to tell the students,
Yes.
you are in a lucrative spot here in Eau Claire and the Midwest. The employers are seeking you out. You're wonderful people. You have so much to offer. You're quality people. And that's exactly what the rest of the panel is saying.
This is a video time capsule, and we have a wonderful opportunity here, an opportunity not many people have, and that is to speak to the future. It is now 25 years hence. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary, those of us that are around, and those that are to come are looking at this videotape. And right now, they're viewing the videotape. This is 25 years from now. And I'm going to ask you to speak to the future. What would you say to a viewer 25 years from now, what would you say to them about this university based on your experience here and based on your hopes for the future? And I think what I'll do is we'll just go in the order that we have been this morning, and I'll let Lorraine start.
So I want to go back. Are
Well,
you asking me to go back?
You're speaking to the future. It's 25 years from now.
Okay. I can scarcely comprehend it. My first question is, what is the library of the future going to be like? With everything so computerized, I really look at that and wonder what it's going to be like. I also look at the training, the additional training seminars that will have to exist. I think that might be one of the weak points that we have had, that as technology continues and improves and so on, that it's mind-boggling, and we haven't been able at times to hang on as much as we would like to. Therefore, society becomes a bit fragmented and curriculum becomes a bit fragmented. I look at the future to be exciting, but I can't comprehend too much beyond that other than a takeoff on all of these things that we have talked about to continue to grow in that sense.
Ron?
In speaking to viewers 25 years from now, hope, and I think I could say expect, that if I could know what they'd be doing, I'd envy them. And I mean by that, I think they'd be involved in an educational process in which students are much more active learners rather than simply passive recipients. I don't think that kind of spoon-feeding or dishing it out is going to continue to work. We're going to have to increasingly engage students in active learning. We're going to find that the university is even more diverse in some ways, but at the same time is going to be held together by the urge, the need to develop particular skills in language, in statistics, in computers, in a variety of directions that will make it a very exciting place to be. And I think I envy those people 25 years from now.
Thank you.
Reflecting back on our discussion, I would hope in the future that our graduates would graduate with more than just the English language as a background. I would hope that they would have additional language skills, and along with those language skills, an appreciation of other cultures, so that they graduate from a university with a much broader understanding of their neighbors who will live so close to them 25 years from now. The other thing that I hope will happen, and I think it will, is that through teleconferencing, I think the teachers will find it easier to keep up to date on current trends and information by not having to travel great distances to go to conferences and meetings, by having it right in their own office or perhaps in a conference room. And I think that'll happen. But underlying all of these things, in the future, if we don't appreciate each other as human beings and respect each other and have that dignity, and then somehow communicate that to our students so that when the student graduates, they know that they're not the boss, but they're a person who goes out there to serve the world and the people of the world, so that we can grow together and be together more as a harmonious community rather than people with differences. That would be my thought.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah?
I'd like to talk about two areas. One is the role that the university is playing now in the relationship between economic development and education. In a vehicle that is called Momentum 21, the university has been crucial in helping to bring together business leaders and leaders from the public sector and from education from the area we are now newly naming the Chippewa Valley, this broader regional center. And our university has played a significant role in challenging us all to see how private venture and capitalism and the business side of economic development is entirely related to workforce development and creation of good citizens, and how that is therefore connected to the kind of traditional good public services that we've had and the kinds of traditional good education. The vision for the future that was developed by Momentum 21 saw us not as an isolated corner of the world, but as a matter of fact, as a growing center of technology, science, and business. We're taking a heavy advantage of our own agribusiness roots and looking at our increasingly creating network connections among diverse kinds of institutions, not simply the university, but our libraries and businesses as well. A mega base of a network of information that we use together, an incubator system where in fact we develop the kinds of new work opportunities that will in fact be advantages for everyone. The second side that I want to talk about relates to another initiative, national initiative this time, that had its roots here. The American Association of University Women, which I served as president, issued a report this year called How Schools Shortchange Girls. This report actually had its roots at UW-Eau Claire in work that we've done since 1984 on workshops for girls called Choices and Challenges, aiming at helping little girls seeing all of the possibilities that await in their future if in fact they're prepared for those. What the AAUW report did was to bring to the front pages of our newspapers nationwide a story that was no news to most of us who'd worked in it. That is, looking at 1,300 major research studies over the last 20 years, they enumerated all the ways that girls are underserved by the public education that they get, ranging from receiving significantly less attention from classroom teachers than boys do, to sexual harassment, which in fact makes a hostile educational setting for girls as early as kindergarten and is not challenged by the school system, to under-challenging girls in math and science, so they are less prepared to be a significant part of our workforce than they should be. What we did in that report on a national sense is what we've tried to do here. That is to take a time when our nation is calling for education reform and under an education president, and to challenge our country to do more than to think in traditional terms about education reform. We first did that here at our university in 1984, and it led to the kind of broad relationship between economic development and education reform, which I described in Momentum 21. The point is that we need to see ourselves here as a laboratory to begin to address problems, to identify problems, to address them in creative ways, and then to begin to see that the models that we are creating here can and must be transplanted around the country. We are not different from, we are in fact a laboratory that is creating new ideas, new paradigms, new models for the 21st century, and we have to get our light out from under the basket, just as we have to get our students out into that world.
25 years from now, viewers looking at this discussion will feel that UW-Eau Claire has been important in removing gender bias.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our discussion time, and looking at these topics, I see it that I've taken somewhat of a scattershot approach, and I would like to give any of you an opportunity to make a comment, raise a question about anything that we've talked about this morning, or any of the topics that I may have missed, points that I may have missed. Any summary statements? Any?
Ron was talking about a change in the curriculum,
Yeah.
and now that I'm a retired faculty person, I find that there are a lot of opportunities because I have the time now to learn more, to read more, to travel more. When I was out in the state of Washington just a few weeks ago, I met some people who were on an elder hostel trip up the Alaskan passageway there. And in fact, at one of their landings, one of their guests called them hostile elders rather than elder hostels. I don't believe that was true because they were all, very friendly people. But I think maybe perhaps the university could look at programs of outreach for younger hostels rather than elder hostels and try to give them some of the values that this panel has been talking about, outside of wanting them to come and get and be committed to a 4-year degree or an academic formal experience. And maybe that's another way that the university can contribute in the future to society, to give them a taste, to broaden their perspectives, give them an opportunity that they don't get at a technical school or in the high school. And hopefully, maybe at Eau Claire we could be leaders in that respect.
Well, we already are. The Reach for the Stars program aims at minority young people between the grades 6 to 9, brings them here to get a summer experience that connects with physics, with our astronomy lab at Beaver Creek, and with writing and connecting mythology and writing skills and language skills. We're beginning to see very clearly that our responsibility is a pre-college responsibility as well as an elder hostel responsibility. And I think that enriches us as well as the kids.
Sure does.
And once a teacher, always a teacher, so I know that if you change your lifestyle, you'll still be supporting the university in a variety of ways. As you say, we can find a number of things to promote the university and to have an ongoing education ourselves.
We have become the first installment of a video time capsule celebrating the 75th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Been talking about the past, present, and future of UW-Eau Claire. I would like to thank Lorraine Missling, Ron Mickel, Dick Beckman, and Sarah Harder for contributing this morning. Excellent insights. Appreciate your coming down this morning to talk with us. I'm Eric Wheeler, and this has been the first of the video time capsule series.